The rain hammered against our apartment windows like bullets against glass when Leah walked through the door, designer suitcase in hand, and that look on her face. The one that said she'd already made up her mind about something I wasn't going to like. "I'm too young to be tied down, Eli," she announced, setting her bag down with theatrical precision. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the storm outside, and she wore that red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Funny how she'd chosen tonight to wear it. I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing blueprints for the luxury condo project downtown. "You want to explore? Here's a compass," I said, gesturing toward the kitchen drawer. "North is that way." She rolled her eyes, that practiced motion she'd perfected over the past 6 months. "I'm serious, Eli. We got married too young. I need space to figure out who I really am." "And who might that be? Someone who takes weekend trips to Portland without mentioning where she's staying." Her face flushed, but she recovered quickly. "I don't owe you a detailed itinerary of my personal growth journey." Personal growth journey. Right. I'd seen the credit card statements, the fancy hotel charges, the expensive dinners for two, the lingerie purchases from shops I'd never seen her visit locally. "Take all the space you need," I said, turning back to my laptop. "I'll be here, building things that actually matter." She grabbed her suitcase and headed for the bedroom. Within 20 minutes, she'd packed another bag and was heading for the door, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and wounded pride. "I'll be staying with Sophie for a while," she called over her shoulder. "Give Sophie my regards," I replied, but the door had already slammed shut. I waited exactly 5 minutes before opening her laptop. Leah had always been careless with passwords. Our wedding date. How romantic. What I found in her video folder made my jaw clench so hard I thought I might crack a tooth. Dozens of files, all featuring my wife and Vincent Riley, the flashy yacht broker who'd sold my brother a lemon boat 3 years ago. The timestamps showed they'd been busy. Our bed, his office, even his yacht. Apparently Leah's personal growth journey had been quite comprehensive. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I pulled out my phone and texted Ray, my crew foreman and the closest thing I had to a best friend. "Change the locks. Tomorrow, early." His response came back immediately. "About time, boss. Want me to bring coffee?" "Make it strong," I typed back. The next morning, I was sipping Ray's industrial-strength coffee when old Pete shuffled up to our work site. Pete had been working the docks for 40 years and knew every piece of gossip in town before it happened. "Saw your wife in that fancy Audi last night," he said, lighting a cigarette despite the no smoking signs. "Loud music, laughter. Not yours, though." I nodded, unsurprised. "Vince Riley's car?" "That's the one. Parked behind your building around midnight. Figured you should know." "Thanks, Pete. I owe you one." "You don't owe me nothing, son. Just hate seeing good people get played." The Marina Bar was exactly the kind of place Leah would never set foot in. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and the smell of fish and stale beer. Perfect for my purposes. Ray and I had been nursing beers for an hour when Vince strutted in, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He bellied up to the bar and immediately started bragging to Tommy, the bartender. "You should see this chick I'm seeing," Vince said, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Married, but ready to trade up if you know what I mean." He pulled out his phone and showed Tommy something that made the bartender whistle low. My grip tightened on my beer bottle. "She's filing for divorce next week," Vince continued. "Gonna take her husband for everything. Guy's just a construction worker. Won't know what hit him." Ray's hand landed on my shoulder, keeping me in my seat. "Easy, boss," he murmured. "Let him hang himself." Old Pete materialized beside our table like he'd been summoned. "That footage you were asking about," he said quietly, sliding an envelope across the sticky surface. "Security cam from the Marina office. Shows everything from last Tuesday night. I slipped him a 50. This never happened. What never happened? Pete grinned and shuffled away. 20 minutes later, Vince stumbled out of the bar, clearly having celebrated his conquest a bit too enthusiastically. Ray and I followed at a distance, watching him fumble with his keys beside that ridiculous Audi. "Hold this," I said, handing Ray my jacket. From my truck, I grabbed a bag of shrimp I'd been saving for exactly this moment. While Vince relieved himself against a dumpster, I carefully tucked the seafood deep into his car's front grill. "That's diabolical," Ray whispered approvingly. "That's just the appetizer." The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You have no idea what she's planning. Watch your back." I stared at the screen, wondering who else knew about Leah's schemes. In a town this size, secrets had a way of spreading like wildfire. But someone was looking out for me. The identity of my anonymous ally would have to wait. I had work to do. The shipping company where Leah worked occupied a sleek glass building downtown, all modern lines and corporate sterility. I waited in the parking garage until I saw Vince's Audi pull in, still reeking of rotting shrimp based on how quickly he rolled up his windows. Leah emerged from the elevator wearing a power suit that screamed, "Ambitious woman on the rise." They met beside his car, and I could see her wrinkling her nose at the smell. I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. "Hope you sanitize that seatbelt, Vince." Both of them spun around, Leah's face cycling through surprise, anger, and calculation in rapid succession. "Eli, what are you doing here?" she demanded. "Thought I'd check on my wife's new career in marine biology. You seem to be studying a lot of bottom feeders lately." Vince puffed out his chest like a rooster. "You need to back off, buddy. Leah's made her choice." "Has she?" "Funny thing about choices, Vince. They have consequences. Like when you sold my brother that yacht with a cracked hull, or when you decided to record your extracurricular activities." Leah's face went pale. "You went through my computer." "Our computer. Joint property, remember? At least until next week, when you file those divorce papers." "You can't prove anything," Vince blustered, but sweat was beading on his forehead. "Can I?" I pulled out my phone and played a snippet of audio from the Marina bar. Vince's voice came through clearly. "She's filing for divorce next week. Gonna take her husband for everything." "That's illegal recording," Leah snapped. "Public place, no expectation of privacy. I learned a few things in night school, sweetheart." The annual Harbor Festival was in full swing when I arrived with Ray and our donation to the evening's entertainment. The festival organizers had set up a big screen for movie night, and I'd volunteered to help with the technical setup. "You sure about this?" Ray asked as I connected my laptop to the projection system. "She wanted to explore her options," I said. "Time to share the exploration with everyone." I didn't play the video. I wasn't that cruel. But the audio was unmistakable. Leah's voice, breathless and enthusiastic, coming through the speakers as families gathered on blankets for what they thought would be a wholesome movie. The sound cut off after 10 seconds, but that was enough. Phones came out, whispers started, and I could see several people I recognized from Leah's social circle staring at the screen in shock. "Technical difficulties," I announced into the microphone. "We'll have the real movie up in just a moment." But the damage was done. By morning, half the town would know that Leah Kane's personal growth journey had taken some interesting detours. Later that evening, I found Vince's Audi in the festival parking lot. The bucket of fish guts I'd prepared went right through his open sunroof. Apparently, the shrimp smell had forced him to seek ventilation. When Vince came running at the sound of his car alarm, he slipped on the mess I'd strategically placed around the vehicle. The crowd that had gathered to see what was happening got quite a show as the town's smoothest operator went down hard on his designer suit. "Careful there, Vince," I called out. "Looks like you're having trouble keeping your footing." My phone rang as I was driving home. Leah's boss, Mr. Fisher, was reportedly furious about the scandal affecting his company's reputation. Sophie was seen frantically making phone calls, probably trying to control the narrative, but some stories were too good to contain. The luxury condo site was quiet at midnight, just concrete and steel reaching toward the stars. I wasn't surprised when Vince showed up. Men like him always preferred confrontation under cover of darkness. "This ends now," he said, brandishing a metal pipe he'd picked up from our supply pile. Ray stepped out from behind a support beam. "Does it, though?" Vince spun around, suddenly realizing he was outnumbered. "You can't intimidate me. I know people." "So do we," I said calmly. "In fact, one of them has been very helpful lately." We didn't hurt him. Didn't need to. Ray simply took the pipe away while I guided Vince's phone into a bucket of wet cement. The satisfying plop it made seemed to deflate him completely. "Oops," I said. "Hope you backed up your photos." What I'd learned from my anonymous informant was interesting. Leah and Vince had been planning to frame me for workplace sabotage, missing tools, damaged equipment, all designed to get me fired and make their divorce case stronger. The informant turned out to be Megan, Leah's work friend, who'd been harboring a secret crush on Vince. Jealousy made people do stupid things, like record-incriminating conversations and hand them over to the wronged husband. "She thinks she's so smart," Megan had said when we met at a coffee shop across town. But she never noticed how Vince looks at other women, even when she's right there. "Why help me?" I'd asked. "Because she's going to learn that actions have consequences, and because Vince needs to be taken down a few pegs." The revenge I'd planned for Vince's waterfront condo was simple but effective. A few strategically placed sandbags in his foyer, combined with a accidentally damaged water main, created a flood that would take weeks to clean up. The rotten fish in his air vents was just artistic flourish. Carly, Vince's ex-girlfriend, had been more than happy to contribute her own exposé. Vince Riley, king of cheaters, posted across every social media platform she could access. Apparently, I wasn't the only one seeking justice. My phone rang as I was admiring our handiwork. Leah's lawyer, threatening lawsuits for harassment and workplace theft. "Tell your client I'll see her in court," I said. "I've got quite a presentation prepared." The Marina Bar had never seen a crowd like this. Word had spread that Eli Kane was hosting a settlement meeting with his cheating wife, and half the town had shown up for the entertainment. Leah arrived with Sophie in tow, both of them dressed like they were attending a board meeting rather than a public reckoning. Vince skulked in behind them, still smelling faintly of fish despite what must have been multiple car washes. "Glad you could all make it," I said, standing on a chair so everyone could see me. "Since my wife wanted to make our private business public, I figured we might as well do this right." "Eli, don't," Leah warned, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the bar's sound system. "Let's start with some audio from Megan's collection. You remember Megan, your work friend who's been recording your conversations for weeks." Leah's voice filled the bar. "Eli's too stupid to see what's coming. By the time I'm done, he'll be lucky to keep his truck." The crowd murmured disapprovingly. In a blue-collar town, insulting a man's work and intelligence was fighting words. "Now here's Vince," I continued, playing the Marina Bar recording. "She's filing for divorce next week. Gonna take her husband for everything." Vince tried to push toward the exit, but the crowd was too thick. Old Pete had positioned himself strategically by the door, arms crossed and grinning. "And finally," I said, "we have security footage from the marina showing my wife and her boyfriend using other people's property for their romantic encounters." I didn't play the video, but I held up the envelope Pete had given me. "Anyone wants to see the evidence, it'll be available at the courthouse." Leah's face was crimson. "This is harassment! I'm calling the police!" "Go ahead," I said. "I'm sure they'd love to hear about your boyfriend's little flooding problem. Funny how insurance companies investigate suspicious claims." Sophie was live-streaming the whole thing on her phone, probably thinking she was helping Leah somehow. Instead, She was broadcasting her friend's humiliation to an even wider audience. You want to know the best part? I continued. Your boss is watching this right now. Sophie's stream has been shared to the company's social media group. Right on cue, Leah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and went even paler. Congratulations, I said. You're officially unemployed. Vince made his move then, trying to rush me while I was distracted. But Ray was ready, and the slick yacht broker found himself stumbling toward the marina's edge. The splash was spectacular. Vince surfaced a moment later, sputtering and cursing, his phone and wallet now somewhere on the bottom of the harbor. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. You wanted to explore your options, Leah, I said, looking down at my soaked, humiliated wife as she stood frozen in the center of the crowd. Welcome to rock bottom. She tried to slap me then, one last desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. But Ray caught her wrist easily, and I remained untouchable. The crowd roared its approval as Leah finally broke down, sobbing into her hands while Sophie and Megan slunk away into the night. Vince hauled himself out of the harbor, dripping and defeated, and stumbled off without a word. I stood there in the center of it all, finally free of the weight I'd been carrying for months. She'd thought I would break under the pressure of her betrayal and manipulation. Instead, I'd become the wrecking ball that brought her whole house of lies crashing down. The crowd was still cheering as I walked away, leaving my former life behind in the wreckage where it belonged.